Supposed to make an AT ad without saying fuck.
Welcome back. After seeing, I believe, shield and hull tank Hyperions, which is a sight to see. But not only that, we have Triumvirate, a top 16 team, knocked down to the losers bracket by Galaxy Spiritus, a team who had about 5 days to prepare for the tournament after replacing the block, who unfortunately had to pull out. Like, this is absolutely insane. Jin, what are your thoughts on that match?
Well, I think that Tri had two chances to pick the right tank for the Hyperion, and they missed twice.
Rocket, tell us a little about the Hyperion. What is the deal with that ship? What are its bonuses? What's it good at?
Well, I mean, it's a great local tank ship, but I mean, most people will armor tank them because of the rep bonus on it. Double rep, triple rep, and so you'll tank a lot of damage. It's a very good small gang or solo ship. Probably wouldn't shield tank it and put it in the AT though, personally. They tried it. Obviously, didn't really work too well. But
the thing is, we have seen armor Hyperions do pretty well at least in practices. Being able to use a grappler, injector, and MWD is quite strong.
As you guys can now see, we are joined by Rocket X and Jin Tan. We saw Jin Tan a little earlier, but now we've got Rocket X, head of the Wrecking Crew down in Derelict. I think it's the super capital highway of New Eden. All the ones should travel through there, right?
It's definitely safe to say that like subcaps is not my forte. So
yes.
this is an interesting setting for me to be in, really. But
yeah.
We'll see how we go.
It's great to have you here. I'm really excited by today the fact that we've seen so much variance in the ships that have been brought out. We've seen variance in styles of logistics. T2 cruiser, T1 cruiser. We've had Logifrigs as well. From Lynx, we've had both battle cruiser and command destroyer Lynx come through. We've seen a wide variety in the battleship cores brought, rather than seeing just TFI after TFI after TFI, which some people were predicting. What have your guys' favourite matches so far been today in terms of interesting ship picks? Like maybe you've got a favourite hull. Let's start with you, Jin Tan.
Obviously, the dual curse pick from
yes.
I can't remember who brought it.
Had to be Amar.
Yeah, but no, that is a wonderful use. Like being able to fly a couple of armor curses with dual missile disruptors, that just demolishes the standard core that people have been bringing, the Typhoon fleet issues and the Scorpion Navy issues. If you can reduce the precision on them, because the reason you use those hulls is because they have an application bonus, removing that and then some just makes you invulnerable. As long as they don't get enough tackle on you, and as a curse you can newt out a lot of that, you're safe. It's so interesting.
For a ship that doesn't really do any damage, it's got that double threat of newts and tracking disruption. Rocket X, what are some of your favourite matches or favourite ships that you've seen today?
Well, I mean, like the matches have been great so far, but I'm going to say the PL's match this morning, which wasn't streamed, but they fielded a State Raven. So I mean,
pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean,
Just,
you don't see that ever. Well, I was going to say every day, but you don't see it ever, really, do you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably been done in the past, maybe a state ship in an AT.
I mean, I don't remember it, but then again, I am 12 years old. Still, moving on to the next match we've got up in front of us with Tri going down into the losers bracket, we have Spaceship Samurai versus Brave Collective. Now, this is a pretty interesting match because back in the days of Brave's height, they had the Hero Coalition, right? They were down in the south in Provi. I think PL visited them as friendly neighbours once or twice. And Brave and Spaceship Samurai were allied then. Now they're going head-to-head in the tournament. Do you think that we might see some pilots that know each other from old alliances coming against each other? I mean, this is a match with a pretty good story, no?
It's effectively just a grudge match, really, isn't it? People who've bitter ex-girlfriends, as you might say.
Oh.
So that's going to be really fun to see. Spaceship Samurai have obviously latched onto Pandemic Horde, and have been working with them, or at least they were in the Quirius Fight Club. So I don't know how that relationship is shaking out now. But it's going to be very interesting to see two kind of almost newbie-focused alliances go head-to-head. We're going to see probably some very interesting ship picks because of that. People are coming in here without previous Alliance tournament expertise. And obviously Brave is missing Caladron, who was the guy who took them so far last time.
Yes.
So they're going to be having some new leadership on probably both sides.
Yeah, it's a great place to kind of have new talent rise up, bring some new ideas in, but again, losing that experience is a big deal. One thing I would like to talk about, ships that these two teams may may possibly not have the wallet to field, but some ships that we may see later on in the tournament, especially as we come towards the final weekend, Alliance Tournament prize ships. I mean, Rocket, you currently own a Fiend, I believe, which is a Hick. Hicks are shown to be thought to be very strong this year. They were raised from 12 points to 13 points when people found that they were really, really good. They've got 37.5k scram on them. What are your thoughts on the Fiend as a new AT ship, both on Tranquility when it's introduced and as its use potentially in the AT? What are its strengths here?
Well, I mean, it's a very hard ship to pin down. Makes it great for small nano-y type stuff. It does a lot of damage. You're looking at about 1,000 DPS pumping out of a Fiend. If you buffer tank it, 200,000 EHP, which is a lot even for a Hick. Obviously, with the scram, you're looking at countering enemy kiting ships, but you just can't stop a Fiend because of the AB on it. If you scram it, it just carries on going. Yeah. And for that reason, especially with the AT being the way it is in such a closed environment, a ship like that on field is very, very powerful. And you could argue that it was certainly one of the factors that made CCP lean towards putting the new restriction on this year, where you're only allowed one AT ship per team.
Yeah, do you think we're likely to see many AT ships fielded this first weekend, or do you think they'll be saved for later on perhaps? We've already seen the State Raven. There's kind of like a show of force, shock and all from PL. I don't think we've seen any other AT ships thus far. I'd quite like to see some today.
Well, I mean, traditionally we tend to see the AT ships fielded by the higher end teams who've done well in previous years. But normally in matches that they're worried that they might lose. So, for example, you may be choosing a Tana over a Bassi. If you're, I mean, last year we saw PL do it against Shadow Cartel. PL lost the Etana but won the fight. Would a Basilisk have stood up that well? Probably not. That little bit of difference that made arguably won PL that match. So normally you keep them close to the chest, but I would say the State Raven thing being fielded so early on in this tournament kind of blows that out the water.
Yeah. Now, Jin, as someone who's on a team that doesn't necessarily have the same access to AT ships as some of the other teams, do you have any thoughts on what you do going up against a team that might field them? So say you're facing a PL or you're facing a Hydra or a Camel from last year. If you think that they might bring an AT ship, if you know that they have that, do you have any special consideration in preparation, in potentially what your bans are going into that match when you know that you necessarily can't field them yourselves?
Yeah, typically if you're going up against a team that has a history of using these very expensive and very niche ships, is to bring something that they won't expect, something very front-loaded, because obviously they're going to be very scared of losing that Etana or that Fiend. So bringing a big rush setup, something set to really put the fear of God into them, is probably an ideal strategy, especially for teams that aren't entirely sure of their own ability to get to the top 16. If you don't think you're going to get to the top 16 anyway, which is obviously the big break point for a lot of AT teams, I think you can comfortably be considered a good AT team if you can get into the top 16, as that guarantees you a invite to the next Alliance tournament, so that's very big. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we were so surprised Triumvirate went out. Being a top 16 team and losing to someone who'd had 5 days to prepare is ridiculous. But yeah, you want to either A, focus on killing it, or B, bring something that can completely ignore it. If you're bringing something that doesn't need to focus down the logi, or something that doesn't need to worry about hit scram, you're generally good. The Etana, obviously, and the Fiend are the two primary AT ships that change the way comps actually work. Everything else is just an upgrade, apart from the Malice. The Malice is also ridiculously powerful.
Yeah, so we should note here that nobody is getting eliminated from the tournament today.
No.
Anybody who loses these brackets, these matches are still in the bracket. They're just dropping down into the loser section of the bracket. It is
play more matches to get to the same place, right?
It is a grueling slog through the losers bracket. Even the top teams, even if they're confident they can beat a lot of teams, they are terrified of going into the losers bracket early. So they really can't afford to lose their first match. They can't really afford to bring too many weaker comps, even if they are trying to hide something, because if you go into that losers bracket, you might be able to beat all the teams in the losers bracket, but when you get to that final day, you get to the losers bracket finals, and you get to the grand finals, your team will just be exhausted. You'll be absolutely burnt out. I remember, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Gobbins from the PL team asked if the PL team could just have just like an hour. If the finals could be delayed by an hour because everyone was just completely exhausted, completely burnt out, falling asleep at the computer. But the show had to go on, and they had to fight through it. And I think they still won that year. I can't remember correctly or not. Still, going into this match, Spaceship Samurai versus Brave Collective. I want to hear predictions from you guys. First, Jin, who do you think is going to win between the two?
I'm going to go for Brave Collective, actually. I think they have more AT pedigree. They've performed well, not exceptionally well, but well in the last couple of ATs. And I think that most of those lessons won't have disappeared over time. They'll still understand the value that communication has, and they'll still understand how to form a good comp.
Yeah. Rocket, how about you?
Oh, flip a coin. I mean, like Brave, I think we discussed earlier that they're missing a couple of their guys that took them quite away in the previous tournament. How strong is whoever's heading it up going to be with this? I'm going to go for Spaceship Samurai and throw a wild card out there.
Okay. So I think I'm going to go for Brave Collective. I know a couple of guys in there, at least when they started back in their Hadlon days, they seemed like lovely guys. They always do their best to stay classy, even if things don't work 100% of the time. So let's just go straight into it. Let's hand over to Chesser, a moderator in the casting booth.